Okay, so so the webinar as welcome everyone. I think I was mentioning so previously Trent helps facilitate this meeting, but he is on vacation today. So I'm here to help move the conversation forward. We are expecting, hold on, let me see. We've got a few attendees. Okay, I think so. Jamie is in the attendee list. I'm going to talk with Garrett. And Garrett, can you go ahead and bring Jamie over? Because I know that she will be speaking to a couple of these items or helping us, Jamie Stastny. And otherwise, today, this meeting, this is our C4 toll strategy committee meeting. And we have a fairly brief agenda. We're going to first start talking by some toll updates. The next and kind of most substantive item that we're going to talk about is the Nexus projects and RTAC and how that's moving forward. And then the final thing we're going to touch on is the joint values logo reminder, just kind of reminding the team about the request to send in the logo. So there we go. Folks are Garrett Teague is also here from PGA, and he's kind of helping facilitate this meeting. So with that, I think I'm going to pass it over to potentially Commissioner Savas and see if we want to start with the toll updates item.
Yeah, Paul Savas, co-chair of this group. And Adam, you want to introduce yourself and then take over?
Sounds good to me. Adam Marl, Oregon City, also co-chairing this committee. Great to see everyone here today. Is this something that you're going to take, Karen? The update?
Oh, with regards to the toll updates. Well, one of the things, and Jamie, you can also flip your camera on too. I think this really is an opportunity for folks to kind of bring forward any information they may have on updates related to tolling. But I do think that there was a conversation earlier today. I believe there's an interest to talk a little bit more deeply about the values document, which I think is best to be talked about now versus just at the end where we're really asking people to send in their logos. So maybe that might help also facilitate the conversation.
I would appreciate that. Oh, Commissioner, did you have something?
Well, why don't you go ahead, Adam, and then I want to fill in on where on what's going on that maybe you're not aware of, Adam, since we exchanged an email yesterday.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate moving this up because I have spoken, excuse me, with my colleagues on the Oregon City Commission, and there are a few reservations about this document. I think that this is a strong document. I think there's been a lot of good work that's been put into it. I had a good conversation with Councillor Sherman earlier today about a similar situation that I think his council is in, just with some reservations about this, possibly being too neutral on the matter of tolling. And for me, it's one of the comments I got was that it acquiesces to tolling, and my response is that it's not acquiescing to tolling, it's acquiescing to the fact that we're not in a great situation and that we have to be a part of the conversation regardless of where we are. And this is not a policy document. The approval of our logos on this does not make anything concrete apart from the fact that we have some shared expectations as to what we would like to see specifically as it relates to engagement. And so I know Commissioner Savas and myself have both talked to my mayor who has some concerns, and I think he may have some suggestions, Commissioner Savas, after that conversation, if you want to go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, well, I don't know exactly what Commissioner, that you shared with the conversation you shared with Happy Valley. So I do know that I did have a conversation with the mayor yesterday of Oregon City, Mayor McGriff. And as we were combing through the value statement, I looked at it with a more critical eye than I have in the past. And I came up with a couple of recommendations. I don't think that change much other than make it, I think, a little bit stronger. I also believe that Mayor McGriff also in other sections of it found a couple of edits that would make it a little bit more clear and strong. But I don't think it really substantively changes anything that I've heard from anyone. So Karen, if this is the time, could you post the red line version that again, it doesn't incorporate Happy Valley's concerns, but maybe it might allay Happy Valley's concerns. I don't know.
Did you want me to share my screen
Yeah.
to show folks? Sure, I can do that. I've got that pulled up. Let's see. Share. I think we can do that. And so is everybody seeing the document? Yeah, I think we've got it. So here, do you want Commissioner Sabas to be able to just kind of touch on this?
Yeah, could you so the first items there, it says Savas, but I want to make sure that that I asked Everett, who's at least in the audience, to incorporate both my changes or suggestions and also the changes that were suggested by Mayor McGriff. So one word, so the very top line under the colored area, that was something that the mayor suggested that we discussed and said ODOT should, we wanted to put must. Change the order of the bullets. So the very top two bullets, you see the one scratched out, all it is move. We didn't subtract anything. All we did was move, be influenced by local voices and jurisdictions, basically listen to us. She thought it ought to be, at the top. So that's not a change of much substance other than making it a little bit stronger and clearer. Down below, she thought that, and I don't disagree, that the word advance public or adequate public transit was strong enough. Maybe it was provide. So there's a suggestion, again, does not change much in the way of substance, but just makes it more clear. As we go down a little bit, you can read that for yourself. The word, with ensure that all tolling or congestion programs are designed with regional implementation. I thought that was a little weird word, implementation. I thought collaboration would be a better word. So I think we kind of agreed on that as well. And then down the fourth bullet there on the third value, the word maintain a regionally balanced transportation system, that stuck out to me because we don't have a regionally balanced transportation system. So it seems to me that we ought to be at least at the very minimum supporting a regional balanced transportation system that provides, meaning that it's an action word versus it's something that is, again, maintaining, which isn't, we're not where we need to be. Transit's obviously the most vivid shortcoming for our portion of the region. And then down below, several bullets down, you'll see in red where it says change the word program to committee. We were concerned if it was a program that it may not have the oversight. So it would read, establish a long-term oversight and accountability committee to showcase financial transparency. And if you could scroll down a little bit more, Karen. Or is that the bottom?
That's the bottom of the document.
Okay, that's the bottom of the document.
Yeah.
Okay, go back all the way to the top again. Yeah, okay. So folks, that's I think that incorporates maybe some suggestions if there's an appetite for that. Technically, I want to make sure we're all on board, obviously, but technically we would need the consent of C4, the greater group, which we're not a quorum of, but the greater group of C4 to approve this. But with the delays as a result of vacations, I think maybe it's something we can still work out for early September. And if we're all on track with these changes and we recommend that to our colleagues, hopefully there's more consensus than there is now. The mayor was really clear that it was only her comments. It wasn't that of the city, and that the city was going to meet tonight to discuss this. And Adam, you might want to speak to that. But and I don't know, Councilor Sherman, does that help? Are you aware of directly of all of your colleagues' concerns in Happy Valley, or does this?
I am, and I have one counselor in Europe for the next 3 weeks, so it's just four of us, hashing this out. And realistically, I have my mayor is just a hard no about tolling, and doggone it, he wants every single document we put out to say we say no to tolling. Period. No more elaboration. So even walking through all the nuance of this and the idea, go through the values and show me anything you disagree with, and so anytime the word toll shows up in a sentence, in any form, in any structure, he's like, nope, hate it, don't like it. So I think that moving some of the language a little bit could potentially help. I mean, I think really my gut says to get him over the hump, in that those first 3 paragraphs, we would somehow have to phrase it in a way that didn't specifically say they paused tolling. It would have to be something more generic, like, as revenue funding opportunities are still in process for the next 2 years. I don't know, something generic like that. But at this point, we have a majority that will push this forward. I had one counselor that's a question mark, but I think the changes that have been made to date, and depending on, he wants to know how other cities are going to respond to this. So, if we know kind of the status of how many other cities have potentially either tentatively agreed to do this, that will sway him, and I think he will be a yes vote. So, love to get Tom on board, but not sure if I ultimately will anytime the word toll shows up in a sentence.
So Commissioner Marl, I'm going to turn it back over to you and any other comments on this. And if there's tentative approval here, I think that would be valuable to at least signal to our colleagues that, these are the changes. Just so you all know my last words on this, I'm going to take this to the commission, both the original version, the C4 approved, and this version, and ask them for approval of both and ask for their preference. So there'll be a preference, but I plan on going to the commission this afternoon asking for approval for both. Just because of the holidays, the next 2 weeks will be on our recess, so we won't be able to come back and affirm any of this.
All right. Before I move on for comments from the group, I just wanted to clarify, Commissioner Savas, this document, it is modeled after the one that has been approved by the board already, albeit a different board, but I just want, that is correct, right? You're muted.
The board approved a version several weeks ago, and then when C4, we got revised, so the revisions that were made at C4 were not brought back to the BCC. So that's a formality that was absent this change. I was going to bring back today. I didn't think that there was any big changes, so I didn't see any issue with it. I discussed that with the chair of the commission. So technically, this is a different, the version that we approved at C4 is different than what the BCC saw, but not of any significance whatsoever. There was small stuff in rearranging.
What I was talking about was, I believe there's an older tolling value statement that just the BCC approved before the newer members were sworn in this year. And I believe that this document is based off of that one. Is that correct, Jamie? Or Paul? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
You're right.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that because what I've been trying to communicate to some of my holdouts is that I understand that we want to be vigilant about not sending the wrong message about where we stand on tolling. But my message was, I think if it was anti-toll enough for our friends on the Board of County Commissioners, I don't think that it's as much of a problem here as well, since this document is modeled after that one. But I do appreciate the red lines that my mayor and Commissioner Savas have proposed, and I don't have any problems with them. Are there any concerns among this group? And I see Mayor Milch, I'm curious if you've had any feedback from your council or have had the opportunity to talk about it and have heard some feedback on that.
I think there were some that were hesitant to approve on the
well, we didn't take a vote on it. It was in between meetings, so we pass along, and the way we usually do that is the city administrator says, if any of you have any objections, let me know. And that feels like a little bit of a passive way of being involved. But I, for one, approve the strengthening of the language, the things that Commissioner Savas shared today, and coming from, I guess, the Oregon City mayor. So I'm happy to see that. I want to call attention people to the op-ed piece that was in today's Oregonian by Joe Courtwright, talking about the funding of well, it was mostly about the I-5 bridge, but he's looked at the bigger issues of tolling in general and ODOT's way of funding everything they do. He describes it as a generational crime, thinking that the future generations are going to be on the hook for funds that are borrowed and then have to be repaid. So, it's still in the community. There's still a lot of conversation about this going on, despite there not being the active meetings and EA process that was in place a couple months ago. So it's good to see people are still thinking about it and reacting to it.
Awesome. Thank you, Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, just one other thing to Councilor Sherman, at least, and maybe to everyone in this room. I don't want anyone to think that we are being, neutral or wishy-washy. I want to make this point really, really clear. And maybe we're not in agreement, but I believe that express lanes or an express lane model technically is tolling. And we have been the county commission has been supportive of that. I know I've talked to a lot of you all. We have been supportive of that. So even though it's not tolling all the lanes, it's still tolling. And I think our heartburn has been the fact that they want to toll all the lanes. So offering free lanes and an express lane, I think, is a valuable model. That's why that language is there. We're trying to move that direction. So Councilor Sherman, if you could convey that to the mayor or anyone else, I just want to make that perfectly clear. We're not here trying to walk a tightrope with what we're trying to accomplish here. We're very clear what we wanted to do, and I want to make sure that's up front. So thank you.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Sorry to do this, but Karen, can you bring the document back up again? I just one word just jumped out at me, and I don't quite understand what, maybe it's not the right word, exactly what we want to do. If we can look at that again. Down at the bottom. Commissioner Savas mentioned that where it changed the word program to committee to showcase financial transparency. Is showcase the right word? I'm wondering what we're meaning there, what we're wanting that committee to do, or is it more ensure financial transparency? I don't know exactly what the right word. I'm just not sure if showcase is it. And then I guess my only other concern is, does this document emphasize our concerns about diversion enough? There is the first bullet point in this section does say decrease diversion in the local communities, but I believe that's the only place that diversion is mentioned. And I just wonder if we're hitting the importance of minimizing or eliminating diversion as much as we should. That's all.
Okay. Well, I'll speak to the first one you raised. We could change the word to either demonstrate or provide financial transparency. I think it's a first step, but if the word provide seems more action oriented, so I mean, I'm willing to make that adjustment if there's consensus. Anyone else have a better word? Commissioner Mitchell, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like. What did you say? I'm sorry. You said provide.
The word either demonstrate or provide. I think provide stronger, but I like to get your opinion.
I think provide would be great.
Okay, well, we'll make that change. To your diversion question, Commissioner Morrow, I'll let you navigate that one.
Yeah, so I appreciate that comment, and I think looking at extending so this is the first one of the second section, extend the existing revenue sharing models with local jurisdictions to apply to toll revenues while not necessarily explicitly related to diversion. The reason why we're insistent upon the extension of the revenue sharing to toll revenues is so that we can take care of those projects ourselves as cities, as we see needs come up and failed intersections come up, that we have the revenue to deal with those. Jamie, did you have a comment on that?
I have a different comment that I wanted to bring forward, so I can wait. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Sherman.
Thank you. Yeah, I just, you know, as we kind of go down this path, and I appreciate, you know, the desire for some individuals to make this a little bit more, you know, specifically not supportive of tolling. And I know that, you know, I think part of what we've talked about, and I think the reason that we got traction initially with the tolling discussion all the way up to the governor was that we had people on both sides of the political aisle that had the same consistent message, and they were in agreement on kind of their positions. And so putting this together in a way that is not specifically pro or con tolling, but more neutral and lays out the values, in my mind, is, you know, we're going to want the, you know, the various jurisdictions who may not have as strong a feeling about tolling to still agree that the values we're laying out are valid values. And you know, by laying that foundation, we're also showing that we are, you know, willing to be part of the conversation and to bring forward a compromise that then the other side has to respond to in some fashion. So, I mean, I like the direction this is going. I think we've done when I say we, I mean staff, Jamie et al. Have done a spectacular job of moving this forward. So I'm good with the changes. I think they look fine.
Commissioner Mitchell, did you have any other thoughts about the diversion?
No,
Okay.
I just wanted to bring the point up for the group to discuss.
Appreciate it. And I'll also say that as Commissioner Savas talked about, what this does, if approved by our cities, it does not change at all what the legislature is going to do. We don't control them. This changes the way that we interact with each other and have a shared understanding of what we want to see in a process that, regardless of if we approve this or not, is going to move forward. So we can either be a part of the conversation or we can be not a part of the conversation. And that is not, in my opinion, the way for us to go. And I realize this is a really big balancing act. We have some cities and we have some elected officials who are just absolutely no way, no how. But we also do have cities in Clackamas County that are either neutral or support congestion pricing. That is not Oregon City, but we do have that contingent in Clackamas County as well. And so what I want is, you know, there's there's power in numbers, and to make this as broad reaching as possible for exactly the reasons that Councillor Sherman said, that this catches people's attention. So with that, Jamie, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Marl. I just wanted to bring up one edit that is included that changes the meaning somewhat of the sentence. Karen, sorry to ask you, but can you screen share one more time, quick? This is the word implementation being changed to coordination. And if you look at that, the intent of that sentence was essentially to say that no one area should be told ahead of the rest of the region. And because it would have economic and other impacts and be an unfair burden on that area. So when we change the word from implementation to collaboration, it sort of changes the meaning of that whole sentence. So I'm okay with it either way, but I just wanted to point that out. I want to know what you guys want to say, and if you still want to include that message that one area of the region shouldn't be told ahead of the rest of the region.
Thank you for pointing that out, Jamie. I didn't read it that way, but you're right. I remember it. That was our intention all along. I think it's painfully clear that what we heard or what we knew, let's say 6 months ago or 8 months ago, was that RMPP was before the pause. RMPP was going to start a year after, and this pause is well after that 12-month period, you know, a year after. And yet RMPP is being delayed and pushed out even farther yet. So if the word was to stay collaborative, let's just say for the meaning in which you read the sentence, if it was to remain collaborative, then we would still get to the same place, would we not?
Yeah, I think maybe it's just a matter of how the whole sentence is interpreted. Maybe we should say collaborative implementation or something like that. Maybe just leave both words in there. I think it's just the timing of the implementation is what we're trying to get at. And to your point, Commissioner, I don't know that it's settled yet, that it will all come online at once. So there's still a chance that, I-205 could be told ahead of the rest of the region. So just, it could be just direct staff to continue to work to get both of those points in there. Maybe prior to coming to C4, we could work on tweaking it a little bit. I don't have an idea right now of a different way of saying that, but we could continue to refine that bullet if you would like.
Well, I think what I could throw out here right now is maybe we could just keep the word regional implementation and collaboration, and then we would accomplish both.
That sounds good to me. Mayor Milch.
Councilor Sherman put something in the chat that I think was good wording. What's not really happened is that individual jurisdictions within the region are going to collaborate with each other on this. The decisions are made above our level, but I liked his approach of collaborative regional implementation. I think that was the wording he came up with, because we want it to be implemented. The timing of the implementation, the locations of the implementation need to be done collaboratively. And those determinations are made so that it's, again, so that one community doesn't have an unfair burden.
Appreciate that comment. Are there any other? Yeah, Commissioner Mitchell, go ahead.
Oops, it went away again. On that same bullet point, I got a suggestion to make. If Karen can bring it back again, sorry. Maybe instead of economic disadvantages, I think what I was not a part of the earlier discussion, but I think what we're trying to get at is not overly impacting certain areas. So how about instead of economic disadvantages, disproportionate economic impacts or unfair burdens? I think that disproportionate gets to that region-wide impact rather than excessive impact on certain communities.
I like that. Is there general support for that? Sounds good. Thank you, Commissioner Mitchell.
Can I get you to maybe write that in the chat so I had the words right? I think what you had said was something about disproportionate economic impacts, but just put it in the chat so we're all agree upon it.
So just to go over the changes that we've proposed in addition to the red lines on the screen right now are the what Commissioner Mitchell is sending right now. We have, instead of showcase, I think the word was provide, and then ensure that all tolling or congestion programs are designed with regional implementation and collaboration in mind. Does that work for everyone here? Okay, sounds good. Being conscious of time, if there are no more comments here, I think we should move on to a tolling update from Jamie.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Marl. So I'm going to try and be fairly brief in this intro, so to leave you plenty of time to chat. And we do have time constraints today. We do have a hard stop at 1. So we're talking Nexus projects. We talked about this last time you all met. Nexus projects is a concept that has been developed by ODOT to basically ask local jurisdictions to come up with a list of projects that could help alleviate anticipated impacts from tolling. That's from RMPP and I-205. The Nexus projects process is moving forward. It is messy. I think I spoke about this at C4 earlier this month. It is still messy, but it is getting a little bit clearer. So the list process is moving along, and ODOT, so this idea came up during the May and then the June RTAC meetings. Then there was some shuffle behind the scenes to try and figure out how to do the process. And now there's a formal request or call for projects that is happening, and it's open now and it's going until September 5th. We have obtained an extension until September 8th to allow time for C4 to meet on the 7th to acknowledge the list. A lot of coordination is going on behind the scenes with staff at local jurisdictions. We meet weekly. We have been meeting weekly because of the 205EA process for a long time. Now we've shifted. That group is talking about this Nexus projects process, and we're collaborating there to work on doing the technical staff piece of putting these lists together. I want to note that Nexus projects are projects above and beyond what will be required as part of the NEPA EA process. The tricky thing is that we don't have any analysis or modeling yet from our MPP or the evolved supplemental EA for 205. So essentially it is all just based on lived experience. There's no data driving these lists at this time. So just wanted to point that out. So far, our coordination with staff has yielded a process for developing this list. That is, each city is putting together their own list of process, the staff from the cities, their own list of projects. The county staff is also working on a county list of projects. Because we don't know what will be required for mitigation, because we don't have any modeling, we're including the kitchen sink in our list. And I know the cities are as well. Put everything on there that you think could be essentially an impact from tolling. So that is what we're doing. That list is supposed to be coming back to county staff next week. It will be submitted in the C4 packet for review by that group and discussion. And we did get approval from ODOT staff to submit in the form of a spreadsheet instead of this really complicated intake form that they were asking for originally. So that will allow us to have one tab for county projects and one tab for each city projects. So each of the cities and their projects. That way it's all going in as one piece together. And I know that was something that was really important that we all talked about at the retreat. Let's stay together, doing everything together. And so that's a process that we have outlined. So the conversation here today that we're hoping to have with you is just getting your feedback on this process so far. If you have any input for staff, I've asked technical staff from jurisdictions to be here and be listening. We're looking for your guidance. If there are specific projects or ideas that you have that you want to make sure your staff is including, feel free to put those out today. There's also any recommendations that you would like to carry forward to C4 for this formal conversation about the list. Would like to gather those and get your input on that today. And then I'm happy to answer questions if you want to go more into the detail of the definition of Nexus project or some of these other pieces, but because we're limited on time, I was just going to cut that out because I think we kind of did it last time, but I'm happy to go into that, and I'll just yield the floor now. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Go ahead, Commissioner. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, great work, Jamie and staff, all your cohorts with all the other jurisdictions. This is great work. The fact that we're collaborating, you're meeting what our mission and goal was out of our C4 retreat and prior to and there and forward. So I really do appreciate that. That's pretty powerful. I'm wondering if, for reasons that you stated and some that you haven't stated yet, or not today, that is that, a qualifying, perhaps a letter, a preamble that suggests or points out the fact that, ODOT, you have not shown us that there's any residual revenue for any projects, barely beyond any kind of mitigation. So we don't know where the money's going to come from. We heard the 2025 session as a funding source for these Nexus projects, but also that we also have concerns about other projects that aren't even tied to tolling that may not be funded as a result of the competition between the Nexus projects or tolling and what the region needs for other issues and capacity problems around the whole region. So it's such a distraction. And it's so unclear. I just kind of wonder if we should have some kind of a preamble that we can, again, have jurisdictions agree on and saying, hey, this is messed up. We don't think your approach is right. And we just want to just point that out here today. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but a lot said. I'll just stop there.
If I may respond, Commissioner Marl. So yes, I think this is well within this group's right to put forward a recommendation to C4 that some sort of a letter or a comment be drafted and submitted to ODOT and to accompany the list. I think that's great if that's what you want to do. It wouldn't be a preamble necessarily, although it could be attached to the email that where we're submitting the spreadsheet, but the spreadsheet is separate and succinct. So there isn't space in the spreadsheet, so to speak, for these comments. So it would be a separate letter or email. So just noting that. There is a lot to this. It has been really messy, and I'm trying not to talk too much so you guys have plenty of time to talk, but I do feel I should mention, since we last spoke, there has been a lot of work by ODOT staff to create a staff group of RTAC staff, essentially a staff person for each person around the RTAC table. We have met 3 times, I believe, in the past 3 weeks. We are meeting weekly. That group is becoming more formal. In fact, we have a draft work program that has been started. Just yesterday, we met with the group, including regional partners, to talk about what we're going to be talking about over coming months and what their intention is with this list. That has been a question. There's been a lack of clarity. Why are we doing this? What is the point if we don't have enough money already? And then we're going to make a bigger list of projects that we also don't have money for? Like, it doesn't make sense. So I would say a ton of work collaboration wise with regional partners has yielded, I think, alignment, I guess I would say, of concern upon all the jurisdictions about what they're going to do with this list and how they're going to frame it and how they're going to use it. The timeline is so tight because they're tying it to submittal of the implementation plan to the governor, which is due to her by December 15th. But how will this information be used? Will they try and rank these projects and submit some kind of a package? And how will we be involved in that conversation? So that discussion is happening at the staff level in these weekly meetings with ODOT. We push back pretty hard on the idea of any type of prioritization of these projects or ranking between now and December 15th. Number one, because we don't have any modeling information to show what the actual impacts will be, or to give us a better idea or help this to be any kind of a data-driven process. And 2, because 2 meetings of RTAC without that information would yield a very uncomfortable political conversation, again, that is not data-driven. So we pushed back really hard against that and saw some traction yesterday with ODOT staff around not pushing for that. In fact, the plan now is for the RTAC meeting that is coming September 18th. The full list will be shared with everyone, the full list of all the projects that are submitted by everyone. And then they will not be ranked or prioritized. And then staff conversation will continue prior to the November 13th meeting of RTAC, which is the last meeting of this year, this calendar year of RTAC. There will be discussion with staff about how that information is going to be used and folded into the implementation plan. But we have made it very clear that no prioritization or package kind of clustering or anything like that ranking of these projects should occur now. And we can talk about when and if that makes sense when the data becomes available to show the actual linkage. But I think all of that, just for a little bit of context and to share that we are thinking about that too as staff and really working hard to make sure ODOT is accountable and that they're not making a quick move towards something in the implementation plan that we are not supportive of. And again, regional partners in constant conversation about this and working really hard to stay together. We don't always all agree, as I think somebody already said here today, even within Clackamas County. Same is true across the region, but I think we've said this here before, never seen this level of coordination and alignment in the region about something. And it's really about making sure that this, whatever is being created here is something that we're all supportive of regionally, that keeps our communities safe, maybe even makes them more safe and decreases diversion, not adds to it. So I think there's alignment around those concerns, and then alignment around how revenue is going to be shared. To your point earlier, Commissioner Marl, I think that is a big shared concern that we're continuing to talk about at the senior staff level, and will continue to evolve and be revealed more publicly in these next couple of RTAC meetings. But just, I guess, context-wise, that's some of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes, and a little more clarity on how this will be used. And also, I think a little bit of more partnership we're seeing from ODOT at the staff level in working with your staff, with me. Karen's a part of that meeting. Anyone who has an RTAC representative has a staff person invited to those meetings. So all of a sudden there's a little bit of a shift, and I think a little more collaborative approach, which is encouraging. And I say that, of course, with a grain of salt, just wanting to be hyper vigilant and make sure that we're staying aware of what's going on, but also wanting to share that there is some movement there, which I think is positive. So that was a lot, but hopefully that helped with context.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jamie. And that's great to hear. Mayor Milch.
Well, I think the lack of modeling, as Jamie pointed out, it does make it more difficult, but for those of us in communities that are already impacted by diversion, even pre-tolling, we would probably easily be able to identify intersections and projects. But I have the same concern as you do about the process being somewhat competitive. When I look at all those yes, no questions that are part of the intake form, if I'm filling out, if I want to get a Nexus project funded in my community, I'm going to say, yes, it's impacted by tolling. Yes, it impacts communities, underserved communities disproportionately. Yes, it's a safety concern and so on. And if I get more yeses than, an intersection in Commissioner Morrow's community, maybe my intersection gets funded and his doesn't. That's not collaborative, that's competitive. And that's the last thing we want to be, is in competition with each other by how we fill out these forms. So I think if you get some insight into how they're planning to use those questions and analyze, and if, well, this project got 7 yeses and this one only got 5, so the one with 7 gets funded. I just don't want us to be in competition with each other like that.
Yeah, great point, Mayor Milch. I think we are, as staff, we're hyper aware of that, and we're asking a lot of questions. We are not getting a lot of answers, but we are getting some more accountability and partnership from them through this new staff group to continue to push toward getting answers to those things. I do want to go back to last meeting. I think we talked about some of the criteria that yielded all of those questions that are going to be answered for each project. We were asking, will the criteria be weighted? How will it be used? Specifically around readiness, project readiness. We know some projects are way further behind in development just because our TSPs were not, created with tolling in mind. So some of the projects have a lot of development work that needs to occur before even design work can occur. We have worked really hard to make sure that the readiness criteria, for example, is worded in such a way that will not put those projects at a disadvantage. So we're working, and that's just an example, but we are working to try and make sure that it's a balanced playing field, so to speak, but also managing kind of that political conversation of how this is going to be rolled out, and manage that a little bit more at the staff level to try and help all of you all be successful in the conversations that are going to come in front of you, and make sure that ODOT doesn't surprise us with anything before the staff group has a conversation, so that we're partnering with them to figure out how this information is used, how it's prioritized, and the criteria that are used if and when that does happen. But our first kind of line of defense was, we don't want to see that happen until we actually have some data. And also, revenue information would be helpful to think about it. So delaying that until it's the right time, and then really working in between now and then to be clear on criteria. If prioritization is to happen, who does it? When does it happen? What does that look like? Is there weighting on priority of those questions? So we're working through that. I'm happy to talk more because there's a lot of conversation around those things, but I don't want to take too much of your time. So I hear you, and great points.
Thank you, Mayor, and I absolutely agree with that. So just a few points on my end. So first of all, I just wanted to say that I'm glad to see that they incorporated the issue of safety into the Nexus definition. That was something that I had pointed out was missing the last time we had a conversation about this, and so I'm glad to see that oversight has been remedied. The next thing, I just wanted to confirm, Jamie, that this spreadsheet in lieu of the intake form, this applies to the county and all of the cities, correct?
That is correct. The county and all the cities, and any jurisdiction that is impacted by tolling can submit a project.
Excellent. Because just when I was going through this agenda and looking at that 38 question intake form, I just, here's another thing to ask our staff to do that they don't have the time for. So that is good news.
Yeah, I'll just add quickly, Commissioner, if I might. ODOT staff and consultants are offering technical support.
Excellent.
And they have reached out to Karen and me to offer their support. They're happy to help if local jurisdictions have questions or need information or need someone to input information. I think the approach with this spreadsheet is going to make the input process easier for us on our end because we're just adding it to a spreadsheet. We still have to answer the questions. But I do want to also point out this is going to be an iterative process. There will be opportunities to add or tweak projects later from our TAC members. So just noting that this is a starting point. And I did confirm with staff yesterday, even when the revenue information becomes available, we will have an opportunity to correct the list or evolve the list. So I forgot to mention that earlier. Wanted to add that.
Excellent. And then just real quick, because I'm happy to hear about this weekly staff meeting with ODOT. I'm just curious how long that's been happening, because I remember at our last general C4 meeting, there was a conversation about hoping to get some sort of technical advisory team set up with our staffs and ODOT. So how long has that been going on?
I think we've had 3 meetings in 3 weeks. Okay. And I'll just say it's been a little bit challenging up front. They started convening us as an office hours, like come ask us if you have questions. And it was through regional partner coordination and request that they formed this, and they're still not calling it a formal TAC. They're calling it our TAC staff group. We are calling ourselves a TAG, tolling advisory group. Staff tolling advisory group. We're naming ourselves to make ourselves more official, but they're calling us our tax staff. So it's been going on for 3 weeks.
Excellent. So glad to hear about the regional coordination on that, because one of the concerns that we've all talked about is not wanting to be divided, not wanting our staff to be meeting separately with ODOT to leave any opportunities for special favors to be given. So I really appreciate that, and hearing that there's been some more responsiveness from ODOT is great news. So are there any other questions or comments on Nexus projects? All right, so that, I guess, is what we have for our agenda. Just looking forward, I think it would be helpful for all of you, and we'll be sure to reach out to the other jurisdictions that aren't represented here today, trying to gauge some general feedback on this joint values letter. It was unanimously approved at our general C4 meeting, and it was unanimously approved here, the original version. And so, but hearing from other electeds across the county who are not a part of this group is going to be instrumental in making sure that we can get as many logos on this. There's power in numbers, and so please be reaching out to your colleagues to gauge their support for this. And so it's my understanding that we will hopefully get this revised letter on our next C4 agenda, so that we can get that approved, so then it can also be dispersed just as the original one has been to all of the jurisdictions. So we have, in Oregon City, we have a meeting tonight, and this was on our agenda, so I'll just move that we table that until we get an updated version. And I think those are some really strong updates that we had. So I really appreciate the comments and concerns that were relayed here and in the past few days with other people who aren't on this committee. And then it sounds like, yeah, I think that's the main thing we have going here. Commissioner Savas, do you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I would, Commissioner, just suggest maybe that you run the revised version, what we talked about here today, maybe, and just get, just take a temperature reading. You don't need to approve it. I'm okay with you all postponing that or tabling it, but I would like to take the temperature. That goes for everyone on this meeting, on this call, is just get a sense of that stronger. I totally understand, how and why we're a little bit apprehensive about being, about a number of things. We're growing more uncomfortable as the days go on. I think what ODOT has rolled out thus far in relationship to the pause that we all thought it was, and what it appears it's not yet, or maybe not at all going to be a pause, in the sense of the taking a relook. I have not seen anything that says there's going to be a re-examination of this. So that frustration is really what I'm speaking here today. I sense that. And we're practically at the 3-month mark right now from our C4 meeting when we talked about a 3-month strategy and a 6-month strategy. So I think if anything, it just shows that our patients are wearing thin. They're not demonstrating collaboration in the way that I think we expected, and local voices. And we're still waiting for the subcommittee, legislative subcommittee to be formed or to meet. So that should be, I heard September. So, you know, it's still August. So we have to give that some time, but maybe that will calm us down a little bit. Maybe not. We'll have to see. And we haven't even seen if there's gonna be a local task force, which we were promised as well. I'm hearing very little about that task force. So those local voices may not take shape at all. But we certainly have it included in this document that we want local voices heard. So I think that's why it's important to get that at the forefront. So the sooner we act with approval of this letter, I think the sooner we can convey that that's still a hot issue for us. Thank you.
And Jamie, before you go on your comment, have you heard anything about if any updates on if this joint subcommittee on transportation planning, if they will be meeting during legislative days here in the next month?
We have heard that they would, but we haven't heard any details. Sorry, not great, but that's what we know as of today, and we keep checking in, so nothing new. I think everyone, you know, it was a tough session. I think a lot of vacations, a lot of deep breaths. Folks are starting to reemerge again, so I think I'm hopeful we'll be able to hear something in coming weeks. And as soon as we hear anything, we'll of course provide updates for you all.
Perfect. And then go ahead with what else you were going to say.
Thank you. So 2 things. First, I just wanted to get clear on whether or not this group wants to advise C4 to submit some kind of a comment letter or additional information beyond this Nexus project list to ODOT or to RTAC or to whomever. And I'll just note one of the points that Commissioner Savage just brought up about not having a relook at the approach to pricing in the region could be a topic that could be added to a comment letter if you all decide you want to move forward with that. And then I have one other thing, but I can come back after you respond to that.
So do we have, is there general support to add some sort of comment to this? I see a thumbs up. I would support that, yes.
Are there other topics beyond kind of the broader relook and wanting to ensure local coordination that we should be including in a draft comment letter? Because I'm guessing when we go to C4, we're going to want to have something for you guys to chew on versus, you know, coming up with it in the moment. That's never fun for staff or any of you. So what items do you want to include in your comment letter?
Probably the local voices again, local input on that subcommittee. Just if it's not resolved by then, put that at the forefront. It's obviously contained in our value statement, but it's been, you know, it's deeper than that. It's bigger than that. I also feel I should update you on the discussion at the R1 Act, which was a couple Mondays ago. It was held in Hood River. The OTC has seemed to make a good commitment to bring 1 or 2 OTC commissioners to the Region 1 Act meeting here forward. So that the last meeting we had the chair, Chair Julie Brown of the OTC, and one of the newest members, Jeff Baker, who is a Clackamas County resident. So what I did bring up at that comment that's relevant to this discussion was the fact that we have not, to get a discussion about funding and local involvement, whether it's our staff or whether it's ourselves, that there's a lot of brain power, a lot of smarts in this region, and we ought to be part of that conversation. So I just want to let you know that we are conveying that we want to have those discussions, we want to have that input. And also the other thing that's taking shape that's very similar to that is that several months ago I made a pitch to the AOC, Association of Oregon Counties, who approved, reaching out to AOC and LOC for a joint effort on transportation funding for the state to assure that our 50-30-20 revenue sharing split is protected. And we also look at other funding mechanisms, you know, in lieu of the realities of gas tax and so forth. So I just want to let you again, give you all an update that those are some venues in which we are echoing the same message essentially, not the value statement. It's not necessarily about tolling, it's about alternatives to tolling, frankly, in my opinion. But I'm sure others will probably think that tolling is the right thing or congestion pricing is too. So just wanted to share that. And if we add anything at all, you know, it might be the 50-30-20 split. But maybe that's not appropriate. So I just want to put that on the table. Jamie, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm thinking that it would be real nice if we could land on the value statement before this letter of comments is sent, because I think most of the questions or concerns are addressed in that document, including this, you know, funding split and how the funding is going to be treated and a commitment to funding these local projects. So I don't know if there's a way, you know, I don't think we have to submit the letter of comment on the day that the projects are submitted. We could take a little bit more time, maybe take a week, and hopefully land on the value statement and append that to any comments that you send in. And then we could highlight the topics that you brought up, Commissioner Savis, which I think I'm hearing are local involvement, some kind of a task force or subcommittee as part of that special transportation planning group, a commitment on funding, 50-30-20 or otherwise, and then relook at the approach to how pricing is done in the region. I think those are the three things that kind of don't fit anywhere else and could fit well in comments. So I think that could be done. The values could be appended, and then it's kind of a catch-all for everything if we can kind of land in the appropriate time frame for doing so.
Thank you.
That sounds good to me. And I just also want to acknowledge what Trent has said in the past, which is that despite the fact that we're taking a second look at this, we are way ahead of other jurisdictions in our coordination here. And so this is a strong effort that we're making. And again, really appreciate the work that staff has done to coordinate all of this. So we have our hard deadline at 1 o'clock. Are there any other closing comments before we adjourn today? All right, so I will just put in one more plug. Please make sure to reach out to your colleagues, gauge the temperature on these updates. Karen, thank you for sending that in the chat, that we will have something here today that we can circulate among our peers and hopefully among our peers who are not here today in other cities. And then we will hopefully have this at our next C4 meeting to get approved and dispersed to all of our communities. So thank you, everyone, and stay cool.
Right. Thanks a lot, everyone.